Hello, everybody. It's Gary Stuckey with Real Music. Hope you're doing okay wherever you are today. I've got a great show coming right at you right now. I've got a legend here today. Legendary singer, songwriter, and actress Melissa Manchester is here. You know her songs Don't Cry Out Loud, Midnight Blue, and her Grammy Award winning song You Should Hear How She Talks About You. Going to talk about those songs and their career. Her brand new album she just released earlier this year called Review. She redoes her hit songs, and she's working with Dolly Parton and Kenny Loggins, just to name a few. Got to check that album out. And you know, she's on the road right now doing a Broadway musical. Funny Girl, that's right. She's playing Mrs. Bryce. We're going to talk about that and a lot of cool stories, and I think you're going to enjoy it. I know I did. I learned a lot. So here we go. Here she is. Here's Melissa Manchester.
You've had this long career. It probably doesn't seem like that long, right? In your mind, do you think it's been that long? It's been over 50 years.
Yes, I mean, I, I'm one of those people. Apparently I'm one of the very few who do not experience life as time moving in the blink of an eye. I've never experienced the blink, um, maybe because I love what I do. I've always loved it, as rigorous as it is, as unsteady as it can be. And so, does it feel like it's been 50 years? Yeah, I mean, I've got the notebooks to prove it. I've got the souvenirs,
Sure.
eh, but it's just been such an interesting way to live a life.
Sure. And some people can't grasp that, and they don't like the idea of getting older or not being able to do the things they used to do. And nobody after so many years is going to sound identical. Some
Yeah,
people are so picky and they're thinking they got to
right.
sound and do this just the same
Yeah,
way. Of course,
yeah.
it's not going to happen. But you sound pretty doggone good.
Thank you. I've taken care of my voice, and I have made adjustments in terms of keys of songs, and I'm well aware of what my body can no longer produce. And yet, for the time being, I'm in pretty good shape.
That's great. And that says it all. I mean, that's when you're still able to do it and you're doing it well. That's to me, that's a blessing and that's a great thing. And I know the
Yeah,
fans are loving it. I know you
yeah,
just released an album called Review and
yes.
you redid some of your classic songs,
Mhm.
and I'm loving it. I
Thank
love
you
the
very
songs.
much.
You're welcome. Dolly Parton. Now that's a awesome lady. Y'all had fun on your songs of your song that you did, the Midnight Blue
Midnight
song.
Blue, yes, yes.
That was
Yeah.
fun.
Oh, it was unbelievable. I mean, I had reached out to Dolly to sing on another song, and she said, "No, this one doesn't suit me." She said, "But think of something else because I'd really like to be part of your album." And none of these songs were really constructed as duets. And I thought, well, what would be interesting to rethink as a duet between two women? And I thought, Midnight Blue would be so interesting as a conversation between two old friends
Right.
who happen to be women. And so I sent her the track. I sent her all the vocal parts so she would know what to sing. And she recorded down at her studio, outside of Nashville, I guess. And she sent back this performance, which is what you hear. It's so wondrous. It's so how she sings and how she uses her voice and finds interesting harmonics. It's so unique, but it was so tender
Yeah,
that I went back into the studio to re-record my part because I wanted to match her emotional space.
sure.
And then when we all flew down to Nashville to film the video, it was unbelievable. I mean, she's a true queen,
Yeah, yeah,
and she's deservedly so.
right.
Her philanthropy is, forget her talent, her philanthropy is so gigantic, and heartfelt.
Yes.
And in the last scene of the video, we were in an old Mustang, and she and I were sitting in the back, and my director was facing us with the camera, and we were just going out the parking lot, we were making a right and a right and a right, and then going back into the parking lot. Well, it was on Music Row, so there was a tour bus passing by unexpectedly, and when they saw her, people almost fell out of the top of the bus, just screaming her name, and it's in the video, and it was just, you know, it's remarkable. But people just pull over when they see her, they just wave, and it was, and she is a working woman. You
Right.
know, I asked her, I said, would you ever consider, she's been doing this longer than I have, and she said, I started singing when I was 10. I met my husband the second day I was in Nashville. I said, would you consider retiring? Because some of our colleagues have. She said, yeah. She said, I have a musician friend who retired and it never works out well. I said, I get it. We're just going to work. That's what we're
Right.
just going to do. We're just going to keep creating. So it was, talk about a blessing. It was unbelievable to work with.
Wow, that's awesome. Um, yeah, talking about retiring, I don't think you really do retire. I mean, can you really just sit back and not think about music or singing,
No,
writing?
no, no, because the spirit doesn't know about time or age or chronology. It just wants to play. It just wants to sniff around for the next thing to express.
Right.
And so yeah, what's the point in trying to shut that up? You can't. It's like
No.
energy, it just lives in you. And so yes, I'm still writing, and right before I started the tour of Funny Girl, I had been commissioned to compose a concerto, which I've never done before, and
Well,
I submitted that to the concert pianist, and I believe it will be making its debut next summer, hopefully.
awesome. That's great. Uh, talking about the song Midnight Blue, and and going back to that time, I mean, and when you're writing a song and you're coming up with a song, what is the real story behind that song? But you were kind of talking about it earlier, this conversation, but it kind of sounds like a conversation. Was that really a
Yes,
con
that's the thing. That was written by myself and Carol Bayer Sager. We were writing partners for about 5 years, and I didn't find out until the last couple of years that I was the first artist that she wrote for. Because she was a writer for hire. She was one of the last out of the old Brill building, where she just would write and somebody would cast the song for somebody. And I found out that I was the first artist that she wrote with and wrote for. And so our songs sound very conversational because they come out of honest conversations that we would have about being married or reaching an impasse with a husband or a friend or whatever. And Carol has this beautiful talent to particularly make that first line of a lyric something that invites the listener in right away.
Yeah,
And that's a very, very unique talent. So, yes. So, Midnight Blue was my first hit. And so I have a tenderness for it for sure.
that's a great song. And back it up before that. Now you started singing at a young age. Now I know you went to school for songwriting. I know Paul Simon was there too, right?
Well, I
So
went to the High School of Performing Arts. And then after the High School of Performing Arts, I went to New York University School of the Theater for 1 year. And then I left. And then two of my friends who were young singer-songwriters found out, because this was long before social media, there was just a scrap of paper on a bulletin board that said Paul Simon will be teaching songwriting and record production. And everybody was saying, you think it's that Paul Simon of Simon and Garfunkel? Because they were just all over the world at that point. So I was allowed into the class. I auditioned for Paul Simon. That was interesting. He chose 10 very different types to be in that class, and it was a magnificent class. It ran for 6 months. It was a 2-hour class once a week. We all had to come in with either an idea or a verse or a finished song, including him.
oh,
So
cool.
we really got a chance to hear about his process and learn so much. It's a lot of what I teach when I teach master classes, but it's certainly what I use when I'm writing.
Right. Uh, and you had to learn, that whole experience had to be a learning process. You probably
Sure.
grew a large amount in that
Oh,
time. You're like, whoa, right?
well, it was unbelievable. Yes, absolutely. Because what he taught all of us is, I mean, it sounds very simple, but simple is not easy. Uh, what he taught us was that all of the stories have been told, all of them. It is the way you tell your story. It's the way you tell your story that is your stamp of uniqueness, how you use language, how you use music, how what you find the interesting way to get to the point of the song.
Right.
And and he would talk about his own process. He was talking about Bridge Over Troubled Waters, and it had already been number one all over the world. And he said, well, it was an interesting song to write. It was the idea was based on an old gospel song. But when it came time to write the bridge, and bridges are not written that much anymore, but in
Yeah.
those days, songs had bridges, that middle section that connects the first couple of verses and that final chorus, and it
Right.
allows it to build. And he said, when I wrote the bridge for Bridge Over Troubled Waters, Sail on Silver Girl, he said it had nothing really to do with the song. He said, I was dating a woman who was going prematurely gray. And I thought that was interesting. I thought, okay, if it's good for him, sign me up.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, it was amazing.
And it's all about how you take it too. I mean, because somewhere somebody's saying silver girl, maybe they're thinking, of their life or something, not hair or something. Hey,
Yes.
but songwriting, it's deep within you, which I write songs, not to toot my own horn, but it comes within you. You've got all these ideas, and I've learned that all these ideas are floating around within you, and then something brings them out. You get inspired, it brings them out. And just like a painter, you paint a picture. Now, when you're writing a song, you want to find the perfect words to put on paper and say what you want it to say. How do you know that those are the right words to say?
Well, a friend of mine in Nashville once told me that songwriting is like peeling an onion from the inside. And I thought, yes, that's it. Because when I get hit with a something of inspiration, a phrase of inspiration, I'm never sure if it's the title or if it's tucked into the middle of a second verse. And if it is, what person would sing that?
Yeah,
What part of a narrative is that? When I first started writing, you may have had the same experience or a similar one. I was singing songs for these two friends that I was going to New York University with. They were young singer-songwriters, and we would go up to publishers, and they would have me because I was a jingle singer at that point. I would sing their songs, and I would watch them write. And one day, I went back to my parents' home where I lived, where the piano was in the living room that my sister and I took piano lessons on. And I sat down with the intention to write a song. I'd never written a song before. And it was such a visceral experience. It was like a gush. I could not stop writing songs.
right.
Everything was just, it was like a second language. And so my young songs, my very early songs it's not that they're free form, they're just sort of unedited. They're pretty good. Some of them are less good, but they are very free. What I have learned over the years is what is appealing to me, which is to sculpt the language so that
Yeah,
it really sounds like a living monologue,
yeah,
and that the song sounds like it's all in one voice.
right.
And I find that appealing to me at this point because I've been doing it so long. And um and I find that it satisfies not only me, the writer, but also the listener, because they can follow it the first time. That's what you want,
That's right.
because people are so fickle, and attention spans are so short, that if they're not terribly interested in your 3 minute and 50-second song, they'll move on.
Right. And that's something I was thinking about too is, you know, you're a songwriter and you're
Hmm.
a singer
Hmm.
and you've had huge hits with songs that you didn't write.
Right.
But do you view those from a songwriter point of view, do you go, this song flows and it does this? I love that song. Or do
Yeah,
you look at it from a singer point of view and go, I can nail that song?
well, it's both, but there's no question that the writer part of me insinuates itself. Um, because if if these songs are successful, you're singing them for a really long time.
Right.
So something has to hold you, some central idea, some interesting construction, some unusual turn of phrase, some cheeky point of view, something has got to hold you where you can where the song can grow with you.
Yeah.
And when you write the song, as you know, of course it's going to grow with you because you were there at the beginning and you've had more life experience under you. But but yes, I can't help being a writer. And when I am listening with a writer's ear and a performer's ear, and when I listen to a song, yes, I am listening for what can my voice bring to this to blow it up or sculpt it in an unexpected way. Yeah.
Well, and I was thinking about that too with on this new album, with Kenny Loggins. You revisit the song Whenever I Call You Friend, which I
Yes.
love. I love that
Thank,
song, by the way.
thank you.
And y'all do a great job. It's so awesome. Um, so tell me that songwriting experience. Now, here's something I've thought about. When you're co-writing a song and you got somebody like Kenny Loggins, are you sitting there and you go, and he says something and you go, hmm, that doesn't sound right. Do you tell him? Or,
You
I mean,
have
you have
to.
to have an agreeable
Well,
situation.
yeah, I mean, it was kind of silly, it was kind of funny, but we met because we were in the mid to late 70s. There were new televised music awards shows coming up. It wasn't just the Grammys. It was now the People's Choice Award. It was now the American Music Award. I mean, they were really making them up fast and furious. And Kenny and I were often paired together to present. And so we would meet each other in the makeup room, in the green room. And it was with quite a bit of regularity. And he finally turned to me and he said, can we meet in a room that doesn't have a powder puff in between
Right.
us? And I invited him over to my home a little while later. And of course, this was the time when you would write on boom boxes, on cassettes. And he brought his boombox and his guitar and a nice bottle of wine. And I had my piano and my boombox. And we wrote Whenever I Call You Friend. He had an idea. And yes, it's very intimidating to write with somebody who has achieved a lot because you think, well, maybe you're a charity case and they just said, let's do this because they feel sorry for you or something ridiculous. But anyway, we wrote the song. And what I didn't learn until many, many years later is that when we finished the song, thank you very much. And he went into the night. And I didn't really see him for years after that. But apparently he had gone over to his friend Michael McDonald of the Doobie Brothers to play the song. And he played the work cassette. And Michael it was okay. There was not much of a reaction. And Kenny said, really? It's nothing? Michael said, yeah, it's nice. And that was what I learned because my experience was that I brought my work cassette to the president of Arista Records, Clive Davis, and I played him the song and he went, "Eh, it's nice, it's nothing." And I thought, really? Kenny Loggins? So Kenny went off, of course, and had a big smash hit with Stevie Nicks. And I tried to get him to focus on us recording it because it would be a nice idea.
Right.
And we would meet, year in and year out someplace, and he'd say, "You know what we should do?" And I say, "Yeah, yeah, yeah," but we never do it. So I finally, I was working on review. I found a way into the song um, for a new interpretation, and what it was I used an Earth, Wind, and Fire template, their song September. The
Huh.
the rhythm and feeling of that was so appropriate for Whenever I Call You Friend, in my estimation, for my interpretation. Anyway, I did the track, I put on all the background parts with some friends and stuff. And I finally I sent it to his manager, It was about 2 weeks. I said, well, I haven't heard from you, so if you don't want to do this, just let me know and I'll move on. And he said, this is like 10 o'clock at night. He said, well, why don't you send me the track? I said, you've had it for 2 weeks. He said, I'll get right back to you. And 10 minutes later, he said, I love this. I'm in.
Right.
And we went up to Santa Barbara and recorded, and he was just fantastic. And the video is very joyful. And, we finally did it. I finally completed this moment that took us almost 45 years to get to. But, there's my time and there's God's time. And
That's right.
and so we had a beautiful time, and he couldn't have been more delightful and more into the whole thing. It was really great.
Oh, wow. And, moments like that just, stick in your mind,
Oh,
those experiences, right? And you're like, this is great,
I call
right?
them golden moments.
And you've had a bunch of those over the
Yes.
years. Sure. Um, and I was talking earlier about the like songs that you've sent other people have written, like
Hmm?
the song "Don't Cry Out Loud," which
Right.
was a great, uh, huge hit. Um, Now that song sounds like something you would write, and the way you sing it sounds like you're feeling it, and it's a deep song.
It
Or
is.
you finding, I mean, like I said earlier, when you listen to a song and you're thinking, I want to do this song. There's got to be something within that song that
Oh yeah.
you connect with, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was interesting about that song. That song was written by Carol Sager and Peter Allen. And I used to write with Carol early in the day, then I would leave, and Peter Allen would come over to Carol's house and they would write. But I never ended up writing with Peter Allen. I don't know why. But but when I first heard Don't Cry Out Loud, it was a very quiet version sung by Peter Allen. And I thought, well, this is the world's greatest lullaby. It's just incredible. When I went to the studio, and I don't recall because it was such a long time ago, I don't recall if I was ever consulted about the arrangement, how it was going to be approached for the record. So I walked into the studio thinking this was going to be a quiet session with a very beautiful song, and there were 50 musicians
Right.
creating this anthem. And it shook me to the core because in that moment, Carol Sager and I were writing songs about self-actualization, self-affirmation, finding your own voice. It was important. It was the very beginning of the women's movement. Not that we were political, but it was just sort of in the air. And it was what we were reflecting about in our lives. And so to sing this magnificent song where the first word was don't, I thought this could be a problem. And it took me a while to find my comfortable place within that big anthemic version of that song. It turned out, of course, to be a blessing, and it turned out to be a song that I could deeply grow into because it's so beautifully constructed. Those lyrics are so compact. I
Yeah.
mean, it is a true story of awakening and self-realization and it took me a very long time, I mean, really a long time, to realize that because I couldn't figure out what people were connecting with. I couldn't figure it out because of that word don't. And then I realized, back up, relax, let your wisdom show up, and you'll figure out what this song is sharing with people. And I think what it's sharing with people is that on a subconscious or conscious level, is that in the end, we all have to learn how to cope. We
Yeah.
just have to. And that's what the song really is about. It's a powerful statement about it, but I think that's what it is. And that's one of those subjects that really are not quite written about that much.
Right.
Friendship is written about, love is always written about, but the actual act of learning how to cope, that's deep and that's unusual. And you know who really resonated with that song in the very early days? Trapeze artists. I would hear
Wow.
trapeze artists. They would
Makes
play
sense.
that song, yep, Fly High and Proud. And, they weren't working with nets and they were taken their life in their hands at every show, and that song became their anthem. So I thought that was interesting.
Well, well, there you go. I mean, that's how you relate the song is the song talks about a circus and like you're a trapeze artist,
Yes,
but you compare that to life and you're taking chances and you're doing things that maybe some people have failed at,
right.
and maybe they're going to talk about you, but if you don't let them see that you've been crying, they might think they might accidentally think you're tough, and you are, and then it works out. It's like a weakness sometimes to a degree, I think, when people, if you hold in your feelings, you're not always going to hold in your feelings. You're going to go over here and cry or tell somebody,
100%.
but you're also going to be tough and say, I can do this. I can overcome whatever it is I'm going through.
Yeah, I mean
Right.
that was the personal struggle for me with the song in the very beginning because Carol Sager and I were writing all of these songs about showing your feelings.
Right.
Don't be afraid of that. You've been hiding your feelings too long, and then all of a sudden I had this big hit with Don't Cry Out Loud, but
Right.
it all worked out.
Well, it sure did. It really did. It was meant to be. Uh,
Yes.
in your earlier years, when you were first starting out,
Mhm.
there was this guy named Barry Manilow that you ran into. How did you run into this guy? He very
We were
talented guy. How did y'all get?
Yes, yes, my dear friend. We were both jingle singers. I met him on a session. And in those days, the jingle singers were, I mean, they were so stunningly talented. Patty Austin was one of the jingle singers, and Nick Ashford and Valerie Simpson, who were monster songwriters. They wrote Ain't No Mountain High Enough and Solid Like a Rock and just incredible. But we were all jingle singers. That's how we were making a living to pay for our demos. And when I met Barry, he had just become the music director for a new singer, Bette Midler.
Awesome.
And yeah, and in those days it was really interesting. There was no social media, and so you just met people. I would imagine it was sort of the same in Nashville. You would just meet people and you would start running in packs and you would hear about who's getting a publishing deal at this company or a record deal at that company or even just a meeting with somebody. That's what it was. And we were all kind of rooting for each other. And so Barry and I became friends and I sang on some of his demos, which was lovely because he was so talented. And then um he brought Bet to see me at a club because I worked at a club just down the street from where Barry was playing for Bet. And she came to see me on her night off. And she had just been on the Johnny Carson show on the Tonight Show and she tore it up. And I was so excited to meet her. And so after my set, I went over to their table and introduced myself. And, I congratulated her. Um, and I said, what are you working on next? And she said, well, I'm getting ready for my first Carnegie Hall concert. Whoa, wow, that's
That's big.
fantastic. I said, are you going to have background singers? And she said, I don't know. Would you like to sing in back of me? And I thought, well, actually, I'd like to sing instead of you, but in the meantime, I'll be happy to create create
Exactly.
that. So Barry and I created what became the Harlettes, and I was the toots in the middle, and I worked for her for about 6 months, but we're still friends, and she's a brilliant, brilliant woman. They both are.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Bette Miller has my birthday, December 1st. That's we share the
Fun,
same birthday. I thought about.
fun.
Um. Uh. Well, that you've had a lot of hits in your career now. I know that you won a Grammy for the song. You should hear how she talks about you.
Yes,
That's a great song. I remember listening to that song, many years ago.
yeah.
Uh, but when you win a Grammy for a song, that has to give you some kind of, you know, well, it makes you appreciate things, I guess, to a certain degree. You think, well, you know, I think I deserve something for this. I think I did a good job. And it's like, Grammy, does that
Well,
make you feel, I don't know, like it was certified, like, you authentic within you, or,
I mean, it was unusual because at that point I was really known as a balladeer. I had been nominated for Grammys before, but they were for mid-tempo or ballad songs because I have a big voice. And so it suits that ballad kind of delivery. And when when my friends Tom Snow and Dean Pitchford presented the song to Clive Davis and then to Arif Mardin, who produced, he was brilliant. Uh, again, the song is so well constructed, the language is so cheeky, the music is so smart. I mean, these guys have written hit after hit after hit.
Right.
And I thought to myself, and of course the record company, you probably know this, but they 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 don't want to leave you alone. They want
Right.
you to be, current, which is not terribly interesting to me. Timeless is really interesting to me.
Mhm.
But in that moment, disco was happening, and exercise classes were a big deal with disco music playing and all that stuff. So working with Arif Mardin, whom I'm sure you know, was, you know, really a musical genius. He produced everybody from Roberta Flack to and Aretha Franklin to, I think, um Steely, no, not Steely Dan, maybe Toto. Anyway, vast. That he was comfortable in all different milieus. And so we did You Should Hear How She Talks About You together, and it was a big hit. And I was so surprised that it won a Grammy. I mean, of course I was pleased, and of course it blows up your audience fan base instantly,
Yeah.
instantly. And also television was very different in those days. In the early days, there was Midnight Special, which was just incredible.
Yeah.
They've been trying to recreate it, but they haven't been able to. But it
Right.
was these platforms were just really, they were so broad for the audience. And anyway, so yeah, winning the Grammy was great. Um, it's a it's a singular honor because it's your peers
Yeah.
voting for you and recognizing you. And yes, it was really thrilling.
Awesome. Um, and when you've achieved a certain amount of success, do you look at it and think I've got to match that or keep that going? Because if there are some dry years, do you think, man, I'm slacking. I got to do something big. Is that how the wheels turn in your mind?
Well, when I was first, I played in Las Vegas before pop. My generation and the current generation found their way to Las Vegas, and I opened for Kenny Rogers, and he couldn't have been sweeter. Um, and he said to me, because he was a good deal more experienced than I was, he said, "I want to tell you, this is what a career looks like.
Yeah.
It's never a straight line." And I thought, okay, I'll be on the lookout for that. And it's true.
Yeah.
The audiences are fickle. Sometimes they don't like you to change the way you do what it is you do. Um, I and you and I think, for me anyway, you have to make a decision between whether you want to be a celebrity or an artist. Um, that line is a lot more blurred these days, but um, you know, I I occupied my own specific space. I had very frustrating fights with the record companies because they really wanted me to keep trying to be in this current thing. And I thought, man, you are not, I cannot convey who I am to you, and I can't figure out
Yeah.
how to do that. And the other truth was, and this is important to note, I was the only woman in the room. There were no women in those boardrooms. There were no women truckers. There were no women stage managers. There were no women crew. Nobody. And it was really hard to find a way to find language that that these fellas would hear, because they were trying to get me to fit into a stereotype that was not particularly interesting. And
Yeah.
so the the most the most for lack of a better word, heroic part of my journey is that I found a way to last and and
Yeah.
and outlive many of them,
Yeah.
and now be in this interesting. age of the independent artist, which I learned about from my students when I was teaching at the Thornton School of Music. And I mean, now I'm with Greenhill, which is a wonderful label, and it's just fantastic to once again have an engine behind you because you can't beat that. I mean, that's just fantastic. And they have supported review so beautifully. And uh, but it's but yes, I mean, it's all interesting. And when I teach, do you teach?
I don't teach.
You don't teach.
I've
You know,
I've thought about it, but that would be a
yeah,
fun thing to do.
it's really fun, but it's fun on a very deep level because, when I was teaching at this university, so my students were like, 18 through 22, and I remember 18 through 22. And even though they're much more educated, I was never educated, I just made music. And, I would say if you feel compelled to sign a stupid contract, slow down and back away.
Right.
Just don't, but they do.
They
And
do.
but the thing about teaching is you learn what it is you know. Because they're asking you questions about songwriting and performance and how do you feel about how I approach the second verse of this, or do you think this is a good title? Okay, let's talk about that. That's really interesting. And it's wonderful.
Well, I find the same thing happens, interviewing different artists. I find out a lot about myself when I'm asking questions
Sure.
because I'm thinking I'm asking this particular question to show what about who I am.
Yes.
But
Yes.
in the way you answer it, it's the way you are.
Yeah.
But you're an artist. You're a talented songwriter and singer, but you're an actress. And I know that you've been in several movies, TV shows. I remember you being on Blossom.
Oh,
You know,
yes.
that was
As
my generation.
Yes, as Maddie Russo, the crazy music mother, the
She was
singing
so awesome.
mother. Yes, it was very interesting. It was great. It was great.
That had to be fun to take on a task of somebody that who you really are, and you're putting it into this character. Did the character
It,
come out? Did you come out when you were doing this role?
well, yes, she was a singer who had left her children with her ex-husband. That was a new subject in those days. This was early 90s, and that was not discussed at all.
Right,
And the kid actors, Mayim Bialik, so brilliant at age 14. She could have run this network. I mean, she's just a brilliant woman, and she is an actress. She's on
yeah,
um, uh, Big Bang and all that stuff, but
right, right,
she went off to college to study a very unusual form of astrophysics.
right.
Brilliant, brilliant, and it was great fun, and it was different because the thing about music, as you know, is whatever is going on in your life, when you get on that stage, the energy of that music can either soothe you or it gives you something to hide behind. It's just, or you can bring whatever it is you're going through into the performance or into the studio. But with acting, where it's just silence around the words and somebody listening to you and you got to listen to them, it's sort of, huh, I believe
Right.
this is a very distant cousin to singing, but not closely related at all.
Is that something that you would do again, or as
Well,
far
I'm
as a
doing it.
TV show?
I mean, I would do a TV show for sure, but I'm doing it now on the national tour of Funny Girl.
Right.
I've been
That's right.
on this tour since the very beginning, which was a year ago, September. It will be a year. We're now on a little break, but we start year two of this first national tour, and it goes on until April, and it's just been joyful. It's been just fantastic. When you're a performer, you go to a place, you do a concert, you walk into the back of a building, you leave, you go to the next place. You never see
Right.
anything. To see the United States a week at a time or 2 weeks at a time in one place, Providence or Detroit or Memphis or DC or Los Angeles. I mean, it's just been, oh my God, look at the trees, look at the local birds, look at the
Right.
local coffee shop. I've never seen that thing. I mean, it's just been wonderful. And the company is very happy and they're very talented and it's a gorgeous show. It was originally mounted on Broadway. It's what made Barbara Streisand a star in 1964, and it's never had a national tour. So I'm thrilled to play the part of Rose Bryce, the mother of Fanny Bryce, whose story it is. And it's wonderful. It's gonna it's gonna be hard to leave this because it's been so beautiful. Although my fans say, "Are you ever going to come back and do concerts to support your latest album?" And I said, "I promise to come
You
back,
got
but not right now." So
you're a
hold
busy
on.
lady. Well, well, so when that winds down, what do you jump off to? What's the next, you know, part that you jump onto? Is there an album that you're working on or anything like that?
I have been writing, I do have some original songs that have accumulated. It's hard to know because some people have said sing more of the American songbook. Be one of those artists. Be like Ella Fitzgerald and just cover all of the great songwriters, which is luscious to me. But I am also a songwriter, and it's how I navigate life. If something very joyful happens, if something heartbreaking happens, it shows up in a song for me, and I can't deny it because that's part of a very large part of who I am. So, but yes, I will be going back to doing concerts. I believe I'm going to be doing a tour with a friend. I won't mention who right now, but
Oh,
it's still in the works. But yeah, there's just stuff to do.
of course, always something to do. Well,
Yes.
is there a song within you that hasn't come out yet that you think is going to be this big anthem that maybe people haven't heard yet? Is that
I
bubbling
don't
over?
I don't know. I must say that that some of the songs that are waiting in the wings to be fully recorded, they are anthemic because I do have a leaning for that. I don't know why. I just, part of it is that I was raised. My father was a bassoonist in the orchestra of the Metropolitan Opera, so I was raised with this enormous, beautiful sound. I mean, really, the Olympics of music. And
Yeah,
so big sounds do not intimidate me, and my songs find their comfortable place in large settings. It doesn't mean it's always correct. Sometimes songs, as you know, are very evocative if they're very intimate, very quiet, very personal. So we'll see. We'll see. I mean, that's the thing about songs that's so remarkable. The longer I do this, the more remarkable the song form is, because what it does to people, what it gives them permission to feel or remember, or be elevated by, or find a solution to a crisis through. I mean, the song is of such service to the listeners. I only know this because that's what people tell me.
yeah,
Because as you know, when you're writing a song, it's, well, what is it? We don't know what it is until we know what it is. But what songs can do for people, for listeners, it's such a blessing. It's such an
yeah.
unexpected blessing. Incredible.
I know it is. And it's got to be, especially when there are people out there that live your songs, they relate to your songs, and then you're witnessing them in the audience. They're singing your song.
Yeah,
But, and I've said this before in an interview, when you write a song, when you sing a song, a person takes that song and it's part of them forever
a
because
hundred percent.
they take it with them wherever they go.
A
All the
hundred
hurt,
percent.
all the
Uh,
good times, forever, right?
yes, and
And
yes,
that's
and
crazy,
exactly right. And when you play the song and they haven't heard it in a while, they'll say, "I remember exactly what I was going through in that moment."
right?
I mean, I've had soldiers relate to me that how it helped them get through a really rough, wartime, or prisoners, how they got through that, or, teenagers, how they got through. It's so unexpected, but
Yeah.
it's magnificent, really.
I think that's what we all realize in this life when we have something that's a talent and we're helping somebody else and it's helping them live for the better. It makes you realize what your purpose is, right? And you've nailed it in your career.
Well,
And
thank you. and the converse is true as well. I just had one of my first fans. He just passed away 2 days ago, and he passed away listening to my songs. His
Oh,
sister told me, and I thought, and there it is. I'm glad to be of service to the very last breath. It's just sort of thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
right.
The level of gratitude just gets deeper for me, um, as I go. I've heard of, and I'm sure you have too, of performers who will go on stage and say, I'm really bored by this song, but you paid good money to hear it, so I'm going to sing it. Honestly, that sentence has never crossed my lips.
Right.
This is all a privilege. It's a privilege. It's a privilege to walk this rigorous, unsteady life as an artist. That is not for everybody, but
Right.
I'm grateful that this version of normal suits me, and that
Well,
that being
yeah,
an artist really is the only lane where you make a living by living your life.
that's right. That's right. And may you continue that for many, many years.
Oh,
Uh, I appreciate you, and I thank you for all the music, and the songs are awesome. And like I said, keep going, and and being out on the road and doing your shows, and I'm looking forward to that and seeing you do more. And but thank you for talking to me today. I've learned a lot, and I'm taking notes as we're talking. And
good.
but I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much. Keep doing what you're doing, and
Thank
you're
you.
an inspiration to a lot of people. I know that they'll get something out of this interview. I promise you.
Thank you. It was lovely speaking with you. Thanks so much, Gary.
Thank you. We'll see you later.
Be well.
Such an awesome conversation with Melissa Manchester, now in the Broadway musical Funny Girl. Check her out playing Miss Bryce, and be ready for anything she comes up with. New music maybe one day soon. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But we'll be waiting and watching, and always ready for something great from her. And until next time, everybody, always remember to keep the music real.